Da 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 da. Whoa. Da 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 da.
We have Alan writes well. We'll see in a moment. Tracee McDaniels, Nelson Quinones, Tim M, Tom Logan, and CoQuie Hughes. So we're going to find out a little bit about each one of them as we go through. But we're going to start right here with Alan writes well. Now, I'm a former English teacher, so I'm very skeptical about somebody whose name Alan writes well. Tell us about who you are and tell us about your work.
So my name is Alan Wells. I am a children's picture book author. Alan Writes Well is actually just my the name that I use on my Instagram handle and my social media handle. My first children's picture book is Pride Baby. Actually follows a queer family as they experience Pride in DC, and it's based off of set to the backdrop of Black Pride in DC, where it's set in DC during Black Pride. DC is actually where Black Pride started. And my second book, children's picture book, is Dante Plays His Blues, and it's about a little boy faced with housing insecurity. And so him and his mom move in with his uncles, and his uncles introduce him to the saxophone. And through his love of the saxophone, he learns to turn his blues into his muse.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow. So tell us about your organization.
Yes, I'm also one of the founding members of Black Creators and Kid Lit. And the organization was actually founded to help authors and illustrators of children's picture books, middle grade and young adult novels. It was created to help us navigate the traditional publishing industry and the self-publishing industry, because there are a lot of us who are in this industry and we don't necessarily know how to navigate it, where to find literary agents, where to find the resources that we would need to become successful authors and illustrators.
So are you a self-published author?
Traditional
Published author. Awesome, awesome. And so what's in the works for you now? Are there more children's books in the works?
Yeah. So actually, the children's picture books that I typically write sort of follow my background in engineering, and then also my love for traveling as well. So my next children's picture book is titled Yvonne Clark and Her Engineering Spark, and it's based off of my college professor who was an aerospace engineer for NASA. And so I really just wanted to have an opportunity to tell her story.
So from engineer to children's book writer, how amazing is that? Wow, awesome. All right.
Sorry.
Walk a mile in my shoes, just a mile in my shoes. And before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, just walk a mile in my shoes, or in your case, stilettos. Thank you for being here. And I say that because in 2021, I did a series entitled Q&A, Queer and Authentic. And in that series, we highlighted the experiences of members of our community. And one voice that was missing was that of the trans woman. And I must personally admit that I am ignorant of your stories. When I was in high school, my chemistry teacher had a saying on her wall: through education, ignorance can be fixed, but stupidity lasts forever. I don't want to be ignorant, So thank you for coming today, and tell us about your story and your 2013 work that you published.
Thank you so much for that question. And hello, everyone. How y'all doing? Thank y'all for being here. You could be anywhere else, but you're here. My book, Transitions: Memoirs of a Transsexual Woman, is it's a story about my life. I wanted to tell my story in my own words because throughout history, our stories, specifically trans people, black trans women, our stories have been bastardized, and people tell it the way they think that it should be. But I feel that it's very important for us to tell our stories in our own words, which is why I wrote Transitions: Memoirs of a Transsexual Woman. It details my story growing up in South Carolina. Before I knew the terminology, being trans, I just knew that I was different. I wasn't gay, I wasn't homosexual. And then I started to learn and meet other people like myself. And then I discovered transgender people, non-binary, gender non-conforming. We're all a big group of people who's living our own lives authentically. And it also chronicles my time living in Atlanta, Georgia in the late 80s. I'm a two-time domestic violence survivor, which is what led me to escape from Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles, which is where I lived for over 12 years. Did some entertainment stuff, got to work with my favorite living icon, Ms. Dinah Ross, and did some stuff in Hollywood. And then 9/11 happened. I didn't want to have to get on a plane to get to my mother. I wanted to be able to drive to my mother, so we decided to move back to the East Coast. And it tells my story, my journey of surviving, being a black trans person. And I think it's very important for us to show up and participate for equity, because I personally believe that my visibility saves lives. Because when we're at the table, when we tell our stories, then there's no denying who we are. And for some reason, so many people want to think that we're just here. All of a sudden, we appeared on this planet from outer space. But we've been here forever. We've been here since the biblical eunuchs in the Bible days. We've been advisors to kings and queens, and we're still advisors. I've advised several administrations. I've sat on the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. I've gone to the White House and briefed the Obama administration. So we are here, and we are positive contributors to society, and those are the stories that we have to share. We want to share. We've seen all the stereotypical Jerry Springer, all that mess. But there's another side. That's entertainment, but our lives are real. So when you talk about us, when you speak about us, when you're talking about legislation, please remember to include us. Because once there's legislation, not the lip service, there's no denying that we're here, and we deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and we're human beings just like everyone else is. So
Awesome. So your advocacy work, I know it's near and dear to your heart. Why do you do what you do?
I do what I do for the next generation. They did it for us. Stonewall did it. The Compton cafeteria riots did it for us. So it's now, I believe, it's my responsibility to show up and participate, because the next generation is watching us. They want to see how we did it, what we did, and how we got through it. Because if we're not sharing our stories or leaving our stories, then they're not going to know what happened before them and how they can use what we've learned, the tools and resources that we've learned, to make their lives better, in addition to making other people's lives better, because it's not all about us. It's about the next generation. It's about us, each one teaching one, and showing that we're human beings and we're living life as everyone else is.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so very much for sharing your story, Tracee. Next, we have Nelson Quinones. Now, I'm going to fanboy out just a little bit. Nelson is like a little brother to me. And so when I met him 20 years ago, he said he was impressed by me, but what he didn't know was that I was impressed by him. Now, recently graduated from Clark Atlanta with a master's degree in counseling. And so he's here to share a little bit about his journey, but also how important mental health awareness is, not only for us older people, but for the youth coming up and how that has changed. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Big Brother, for having me, allowing me to speak on behalf of mental health, and especially as it pertains to young adults and youth in general. So, right now, I work as a case manager and therapist for an agency in Buckhead, and then I also work private practice as a counselor, as a therapist, and specifically sex therapy and existentialism. And as it pertains to our youth, oh my goodness, to your point, Ms. Tracee, what are we leaving behind? What are we leaving behind? Because, of course, every day I see ADHD, I see ODD, I see intellectual disabilities, but I also see PTSD in individuals at 11 years old. I also hear sexual trauma stories of young men at 13 and 14. I see stories of younger individuals who were born to, unfortunately, addicted parents and were left literally on doorsteps. And so they turn 12 and 13, and these behaviors come out that we consider as oppositional or as rebellious, when really they just want to smell their mom. Because when you're born, one of the first things that happens is when they lay you on your parent's body, that smell instigates the oxytocin and endorphins, the trust values in the brain. So then they turn 13, and when we think they're just rambunctious or using or going out and doing whatever, they're searching for connection. So the biggest contribution that we can give, especially those of us that are, I specifically say over 30, because there's still a connection for those of you that are in my generation. I'll be 44 in November. There's still that bridge that we have. So for those of us over 30, if we can set the example of I can fix and be fixed, and not fixed to perfection, but that I can learn and then also reinterpret. I can learn and unlearn. I can learn how to engage. I can even learn how to ask for help. Because also what has happened is now their parents are working 1 and 2 jobs. Nobody's at home. They have the internet that they look to. They have their iPads, their cell phones, Discord, different types of social media outlets that are completely ineffective and completely unhealthy. And so who becomes the parent to them? A machine, as opposed to their parents who are genuinely working hard, busting their behinds, but they're not home. So they can't have conversations. They don't know how to establish healthy boundaries. And then they get into a high school setting, and what's looked at as a fight, which is just big teenage behavior, becomes we got to send you to residential. So it's about what we leave behind and then what we're doing in our present space so that they can mirror and through social modeling develop effective lifestyles.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm going to back up just a moment here. Sex therapist.
Yes, sir. Gladly.
What does that look like? Because my mind went a whole different other place, and I'm certain y'all did too. What does that look like? And what do you deal with as a therapist in that area?
Thank you for highlighting therapist first, because the goal is to identify therapy. And therapy is just a form of self-help. And it's a structured form of self-help, because we have to remember that we are mind, body, and spirit. We are neurological, cognitive, and physiological. And so we have to take all of those things into consideration. And what therapy does is therapy just doesn't say, okay, you can do it. Therapy says, let's investigate what's preventing you from doing it and then repair that gap so that you can regain the strength and the fortitude to then do it. But we have to take some steps in between. Sex therapy is more than how to help 2 people have good sex. Sex therapy is about the individual and being able to communicate with themselves, being able to have a better understanding of their identity, being able to understand that shame and sexuality can coexist, but they shouldn't coexist to defeat. They should coexist to understand consent. They should coexist to understand respect. They should coexist to understand that if 3 people want to have a unit, it's none of my business. Let me work on my own unit myself. Things like that. So sex therapy is actually very spiritual, and it's actually very existential, and I love it.
So in the words of our future vice president, mind your own damn business.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's amazing work that you're doing. And thank you for explaining that so clearly. Because a lot of times we walk around in ignorance and in silence and we don't know.
And it's and honestly, Big Brother, it's okay if people think that sex therapy is about having sex, because sex is a form of communication. So if we learn how to improve our communication tactics, then absolutely we can transition that skill to that behavior, to that opportunity where myself and another person with consent, or myself and two other people, or however you choose, with consent and with an understanding that I'm using my agency with you and allowing you to use your agency with me.
Thank you so very much. Continuing with this theme of connection that seems to be going on this panel right here is Tim M., who is the executive director of the Center, let me make sure I get this right, the Center for Civil and Human Rights LGBTQ Initiative. Tell us about what it is that you do.
Institute.
Tell them about what is it that you do here.
Well, I'm happy to share the panel with Tracee because we met as board members for the LGBTQ Institute, which the center, if people know the Coca-Cola Museum and then the aquarium and then that building in between is the National Center for Civil Human Rights. That was founded in 2014, so 10 years ago, and the Institute came the year after, and Tracee and I were both board members we OGs, right? And so initially, it was the Institute was formed to create a connection and a bridge between advocates and academics, right? So a lot of people can do lots of great research, but if they're not talking to people on the ground who are actually living the experience, people like Tracee who are starting organizations. So we tried to create that bridge. Interestingly, that was 2015. Obama was in office. Gay marriage was about to get passed. We just thought, things are getting better. And then 2016 happened, right? And we've seen a record number of anti-LGBTQ legislation, much of it targeting the trans and non-binary community. And so with that urgency, while our research is great and while that stuff is important, it was important for me to make the Institute focus on cultivating the next generation of advocates, right? So we have young people here in the space having cross-generational conversation because John Lewis didn't just show up on the bridge in Selma and say, hey, I'm here, right? There were people that trained them. They talked about nonviolent protest and they learned from their elders. And so what we try to do with the programming even today is to create a cross-generational conversation. Please stay around for the panel after. It's organized and put together by the youth themselves. And Derek agreed to let us close out the evening hearing from the next generation of advocates. And so that's really the work I do. And I feel like that last panel will be a real testament to my leadership as someone that taught 9th and 10th grade for 15 years. Whenever I find myself struggling with adults, I imagine who they were in my 9th and 10th grade class. And it gives me a lot of patience and grace with them. And because when we think about 9th and 10th grade, those are some rough rough years. And so if you can have grace with that person, you can understand people better.
Awesome. And so, yes, please stay. I am excited to hear from the youth because, I'm only 25. Did I make a funny or something? I'm only 25, but they are our future and they're going to carry on this legacy. So, Tim, thank you for the work that you are doing. So we heard you perform earlier. What other projects are you currently working on?
So I'm going to have a really vulnerable, honest moment, and that is I've really been in a space, especially having moved back to Atlanta in May. I guess people are happy about that. Yay. I lived here before. I left to go back to Cincinnati. I needed to do some things there, create some institutions, and the Spirit called me back to Atlanta, I think in part to lead this work. But what's happened sometimes when you get very professional and you start doing executive roles, your creative stuff kind of falls to the wayside. And so I'm here today to say, I did a podcast called the Brave Educator Podcast, season in 2020, season in 2021. I haven't had a third season.
Radio silence.
Right. And so my last book was published in 2015. Prior to that, I published a book every other year, right? I haven't done a rap album in probably 5 years. And so I say that to say I'm saying this in public so that my village can hold me accountable for making sure that I find that balance between my work and the advocacy I do, but also that advocacy is in hip hop. It is in your poetry. And sometimes people don't want to hear a speech. They want to hear a song. And so I'm saying that in front of people just to hold myself accountable for making sure that next season of the podcast happens, that next book happens, that next album happens.
And you're absolutely right. We're going to hold you accountable. But I want to go back and speak to what you were saying. We all know, and again, the theme from the first panel, that we are spirit, body, and mind. And that a lot of times when we neglect something that is a part of the core of our being, it manifests in our bodies. I remember several years ago, I was having a bout with strep throat. And I just kept getting it repeatedly. And I was like, now, wait a minute, what's going on? I ain't kissing nobody. I shouldn't be kissing and all of that stuff. But strep throat kept reoccurring. And so if you have never heard of Louise Hay and her book, You Can Heal Your Life, it's definitely something you should purchase. And so in the back of that book, there's a chart that talks about when certain things manifest in your body, what it means. And I looked up strep throat, and it said stifled creativity. So your body keeps the score and will manifest things. Thank you so very much for that. So, yes, we're pushing you because we don't want you to have stifled creativity and get strep throat. You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. All right, so I know what an urban man is, but what's an EBANMAN? Tom Logan, CEO and entrepreneur.
Hello, everyone. I am Tom Logan, founder and CEO of EBANMAN. EBANMAN is a lifestyle brand for professional Black gay men. Back to his question, EBAN, the reason why I came up with the name was I wanted something that connected to the roots, and so I looked up an African word, which is EBAN. It's an Ndikla word, and it means community. It means safety. It means fence. So essentially, EBANMAN is a community of Black gay men. And so the reason behind that, I take that premise on making sure that I elevate the experience of the community, showcase the community in a proper light as well.
Wow, awesome, awesome. So there is it's a lifestyle brand,
yes,
if you will. Is there a website app associated with your work?
Yes, so it is ebanman.com. Essentially what we do is we profile professional Black gay men, all walks of life. For me, it was always a gap in the system. Working in corporate America 20 plus years, trying to find my connection, my tribe, my group that I wanted to connect with. Our community falls on so many different spectrums, and a lot of times certain spectrums don't really have an opportunity to get showcased and spotlight like other parts of the spectrum does. And so I wanted to make sure that I was able to showcase the part of the spectrum that I felt like I align with. And that's what we do on a daily basis. In fact, we're also curating the interviews as well.
Wow, awesome. And so there is a wonderful book upstairs that is available for purchase.
Yes.
That features this amazing and dynamic guy with locks and who has this wonderful outfit on right here. Me. Yeah. So please make sure that you stop by and visit Tom. And again, also Tom is one of our sponsors for Artists in the Afternoon, 4 years running. And so we want to publicly acknowledge and thank him for
thank you
of his wonderful service, not only to us, but also to the community. All right, so next we have another entrepreneur and filmmaker, CoQuie Hughes. So CoQuie, tell us what you entrepreneuring about and what you making films about.
Well, right now, I'm making films that I want to see, and hopefully they're the types of films that others would want to see. So I first create films for myself and with the hopes that it resonates with an audience. I'm currently making films that are geared toward Black queer women, and I think we're supposed to show a snippet of one of my films. So it's an anthology series called Black and Mary, and it's basically dealing with the interpersonal relationships of Black queer women, just short scripted narratives. I'm also an entrepreneur. I am the founder of two tech startups. The first one is called Immerse Kit, It used to be called VR MoveX, but I recently changed the name about a couple of months ago to Immerse Kit. And basically, it's an immersive gadget that elevates the movie watching and gaming experience. So it involves wearing customizable smart glasses paired with a tactile seat cushion and haptic headphones. And then I also run a company called Tech Art Zone, which is a media arts education organization geared toward after-school programming for kids, K through 12.
Wow, wow, wow. So that's amazing. So that's a cross-section of work that you're doing there.
Yeah.
You are a woman of many talents, I see. So one of the things, as I was watching your film, they're missing stories, because a lot of times we get caught up in our own story and our own experience that we don't see the experience and the stories of other people. And so I've never given it a thought about the lesbian experience, or I'm ignorant of the trans experience. But it is your work, your advocacy, that helps us to become more educated and elevated. So thank you so very much for what you're doing. And we can't wait to see just a few minutes of Black and Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
also, it resonates with the human experience.
Yes.
Because we can, when we see films, we may not can relate to being a part of the trans community or the lesbian community, but you can relate to what it feels like to have your heart broken, or what it feels like to lose someone that you love. And so it's no different. So we relate to the human experience.
We're more alike than we are different, huh?
Facts.
Facts. All right. And so last but not least on our panel is author, journalist, and founding director of the Black Media Initiative, Aaron Foley. What is the Black Media Initiative?
Thank you. And apologies. I was doing a virtual call with a Black Gay Book Club, talking about my book, but so sorry I was late. The Black Media Initiative is something that started at the City University of New York at the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism in 2021. I was the founding director. I ended up leaving that position, but and I still work in Black media. I work for the New York Amsterdam News, the oldest Black weekly newspaper in the country, 114 years old. But while I was directing the Black Media Initiative, the whole goal, which I ended up going back to, was to preserve the Black press, preserve all of the, give them, housed at the city at CUNY, give them the tools that they need to succeed. So that would be like, helping them find grants, helping them train some of their journalists to do better investigative reporting, training their advertising staff to get more ad dollars, things like that, because of the necessity of Black press. My mother worked at a Black newspaper, the Michigan Chronicle in Detroit, at the beginning of her career when I was a child, and so I was sort of born into it almost, simply because for the Black press exists because newspapers at the turn of the century did not cover Black communities. Our historical record lies within the pages and the archives of Black weekly, in some cases daily newspapers across the country, and so. I was leading that for about a year and a half, but my heart was calling me back to the newsroom, and so the actual newsroom itself, and so here I am.
Wow. So you're also a published author as well. Now, I was taught that ladies come first, but I read something about boys come first. Tell us about your work.
I believe in equality. I think, y'all, ladies, y'all say y'all want to be equal? Okay, well, let's be equal then. I'm just playing. Boys Come First is my novel. I done 2 nonfiction books, mostly around Detroit, prior to this, but 2 years ago, I followed my childhood dream, to write fiction. I was just telling the book club that, I've been a journalist for 20 years. adding, doing stuff in high school and stuff like that. So I was always on this track to do nonfiction reporting, that documenting historical, that type of thing. But I have always wanted to do fiction. We were talking last night at dinner, and how many of y'all can relate? I love drama and I love stories because my grandmother and my great grandmother and my mother, but primarily my grandmother, every summer, watching The Young and the Restless, watching The Bold and the Beautiful, CBS soaps specifically, Guiding Light, As the World Turns, but definitely Y&R and B&B. And so and then I also came up in the golden age where it was Neil and Drusilla and Olivia and Malcolm and Nathan and Aunt Mamie and some of them are back now. But seeing black people in all these chaotic situations, who's the father of Lily? Is it Malcolm or Neil and stuff like that? I was drawn to that at such an early age. I heard you talk about Diana Ross. I am from Detroit. Guess who's my lock screen is Diana Ross, right? And so and shout out to the movie Mahogany. I saw that way too early at an age, and that's another reason why. But I wanted to do a story about Detroit first and foremost. And so there, even as the Renaissance Center on the cover, it was part of the Detroit skyline. But it was important to me to do a story about Detroit. It was equally important to me to do a story centering black gay men. I grew up in a household where my mother read a lot of Terry McMillan, B.B. Moore Campbell, all those black authors in the 90s. But I'll tell the story like I did all the time. When my mother is the Waiting to Exhale generation. She was in her 30s when that book and subsequently the movie came out, and I watched women like her move in the world similar to the way that the women in Waiting to Exhale moved. One of my mother's good friends, her son and I became best friends. He was in kindergarten, I was in first grade, and that's how long we've been friends. And then we both, somebody at a party clocked us real early and said, "These two little boys, watch out for them." Sure enough, we did bloom and blossom into black gay men. And when we reached our 30s, I was telling my friend, I was just like, girl, these same men that were running our mothers over are running us over now. And nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is gender, right? And I was just like, maybe I should write some of these experiences down. And so I could, if I could get a PhD, it would be just kind of talking about how authors like Terry McMillan described contemporary black life during that time and whatnot. And did it in a very conversational way and stuff like that. I felt like that was kind of missing for black gay men of my age. This is not to erase the great works of Elin Harris and James Earl Hardy and whatnot, but a lot of their most prolific works came out in the 90s, right? Here we are in 2024, and I'm just like, where's the stuff for the children of the women in Waiting to Exhale is what I call it, right? And so I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of relationships, but also our jobs, and sometimes being the only black person in the room, sometimes being the only gay person in the room, sometimes being the only black gay person in the room, sometimes being the only black gay person among a sea full of white gay men, right? And so all of these types of things against the backdrop of a city that was 90% black the entirety of my life until now. Detroit is rapidly gentrifying. There's a lot of white people on intersections that growing up, it wasn't the hood, but white people, what are y'all doing there, right? It's just like, what are y'all doing? Anybody from Detroit? Anybody like Dexter and Davidson? Like, what are y'all doing there? What are y'all doing on 6 Mile? 8 Mile, yes, that's Eminem, but 7 Mile, 6 Mile, I'm like, what are y'all doing here, right? And so I wanted to kind of talk about what's Detroit going through now as the three black gay characters navigate that against everything else.
Wow. Awesome. Wow. So make sure y'all get that. All right. Awesome. So I have a quick question for you all. And again, going back to our theme for this year, which is writing for our lives. Why is it so important for you to write for your life? Alan, we'll start with you.
For me, I would definitely have to say I just wanted to always show myself what's possible, because when I think about the youth now, think one of the things that we struggle with in all communities, whether it's Black community or LGBTQIA plus community, we're not really showing kids what's possible. We're not showing them how they can turn their dreams into reality. So when I think about the stories that I write, I'm trying to show them that this is what exists in the world. This is how you can live your life. This is how you can be free and successful.
Wow, awesome. Tracee, same question. Why is it so important for you to write for your life?
It's important to write for my life because I have no other choice. Being a Black trans woman living in these United States of America, we're expected to live no longer than 26 years old, and I have surpassed that, honey, so don't be asking me my age. So I need to tell my own experience. Like I said earlier, I want to tell my story in my own words, and I think it's very important for all of us to tell our stories in our own words.
How old are you again? I'm sorry.
I'm an ageless body and a timeless mind.
Yes, I like that. I'm gonna borrow it. Now, I'm gonna be prophetic here. Future Dr. Quinones, why is it important for you to write for your life?
I think it's important for me to write just to set an example, just to have that bravery and that boldness that says no matter what my yesterday was, this is what my today is, and this is what my tomorrow can and will be. And my yesterday influences how I view today so that I can then create how I want to view tomorrow. I also, going clinical mental health route, journaling allows you the opportunity to take your words and to look at your own words and to see how far you've come or how much further you do need to go, because there's grace in realizing how much further you need to go. So for me, I really write as a way of saying, okay, here we are, Most High. We have further to go. Let's go. It's kind of a commitment and a reminder that you gave me this mind, you gave me this body, you gave me this power. We've got pen to paper. Let's keep it moving.
Wow, awesome. Tim M.
I'm a philosopher by training, so I would answer that in part by saying, I write, therefore I am. For those of you that know Descartes, and in some ways I write, therefore I am, because when I tried to publish my first book, I was told there was too much poetry in it, change it, write a novel. I don't write novels. Then I was told, oh, well, you can't do essays and poetry in the same book. But Essex Hemphill and Audre Lorde did it, so I was like, well, why can't I do it? And then some people said, oh, well, you know, your writing has too much hip hop and slang in it. And then other people said it has too much philosophy in it, because I infuse all of those things, because those are all my voices, right? I'm multilingual in that way. And so I learned that, like, if I don't put this out, like, other people have been able to see themselves and their multilinguistic wonder through me being brave enough to publish a book that didn't neatly fit into a category, but transcends lots of categories. And I got a call the other day that, this is the 10th year that a university in California has my book in the center of their cultural studies program. So that's great to know that, like, other young people are seeing that affirmation in the same way that I found Zami, a new spelling of my name, which Audre Lorde wrote, or the Homegirls anthology, or Brother to Brother, that there is a next generation that's learning from my experience and my autobiographical experience on how to live in this world.
Wow, amazing. Tom, why is it important?
So for me, the book, as he mentioned, so the book title is Representation Matters. And it's very important that we have some type of representation. The little Black gay boy in me growing up would have loved to have had a book where I could see professional Black gay men, that I could get some type of navigational skills from, some ideology on how to navigate this world as a corporate person, being able to identify with that. And the community is at large. As we talk about the thread, to me, it's current and future purposes. Our next book is Black Gay Love. It's so interesting how, as much as it is in the media where we will see sprinkles of Black gay couples, it's not prominent. And so we want to make sure in our next book of Black Gay Love, we're showcasing, I think it's about 20 plus Black gay couples. So we want to make sure that you can never say that you do not have a representation. It is out there.
Awesome. CoQuie, Why are you going to continue to write for your life?
Well, I feel, or I believe that we as human beings, we all have purpose. And it doesn't matter what that purpose is. We all have something to contribute. We all have something to do. And it's important that you do it, because if you do not do it, it will never get done, because you were the person that was brought here in this human experience to do it. So, and I feel like myself and all these other individuals on this panel, including everyone in this audience, we all have something to contribute to this human experience. And if you don't do it, it won't get done. So just do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Aaron.
I'm going to answer this question on several levels, but try to be succinct. As a journalist, there is an inherent need to disseminate factual information and preserve and keep a historical record. It drives me absolutely crazy when I see one of my cousins. I love my family to death, but when I see somebody post something ignorant on Facebook that's not true, as the family journalist, I have to be like, well, I'll either ask, like, where's your source on this, or give them the sources that like factually disproves. However, as a black journalist, there's also this inherent need to make sure that our own stories are being told accurately, because for so long that it has not. There's this thing called the Kerner Report that came out in 1968 or 69 after several cities erupted in rebellion. And the key thing about the Kerner Report was, we need to hire more black journalists, because a lot of the reasons why black people were frustrated with urban environments and stuff like that is because their stories and their voices were not being heard, and white journalists were incapable of telling those stories. So I follow that as a North Star. As a black gay journalist, oh my gosh. Sometimes, quite frankly, we can be our own worst enemy sometimes when it comes to just telling our own stories. A lot of important information about the AIDS crisis, for example, in the 1980s did get ignored by a journalist, black or white, because it wasn't treated with the same level of gravity because it was seen as a gay disease, right? And so there's still much work to be done in making sure that black gay representation is held in the news media. But as a novelist, it's just the need to kind of, Toni Morrison has the quote, if there's a story you want to tell, you need to write it. I'm paraphrasing, that's not the exact quote, but it's along that line. I got tired. I didn't get tired of it, but like, there are so many books centering white gay characters. There are so many TV shows and movies centering white gay characters. And we're often on the sidelines or a supporting character, or we're objectified in some cases. And I wanted to do a story, like I said, I'm not the first. There are several black gay authors that have come before me and several I stand next to. But I just really wanted to do something that like my friends could read. I really wanted to also kind of educate. I see there's, as much as I try to educate and inform as a journalist, I see a lot of that in fiction as well, where it's just like, I can tell you what it's like to be a black gay millennial right now, here and right now. I can tell you what Detroit is going through. I can tell you, and you can, yes, it's a fictional story, but there's a lot of truth within it. And so I see the value of, again, creating a canon, making an archive, making a record that shows who we are.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for our second panel. Wow. Now, at the end, after our third and final panel, make sure that you go up and you visit Alan, Tracee, Nelson, Tim, Tom, CoQuie, and Aaron, because they brought lots of products, and I want you to be able to take some of these wonderful things home and learn even more. Once again, let's give them a hand.
human. You see me, but don't respect me. Why you gotta test me? I'm human. Yeah, come on. This is how a brother feel. Might not be pretty, but it's damn sure real. I lift the lexicon and get my flexing on. Human, spit therefore I am. Yeah, and this is how I feel too. Might not be pretty, but it's damn sure true. I let the lexicon and get my flexing on. Human, spit therefore I am. I represent a nation of blues and blacks and browns and reds and yellows and fellows that like fellows and ladies that grow up with crazy inequities. So normalized people think that's the way it's gotta be, but it ain't. And I can't with y'all today. Demeaning my meaning because I'm human, but I'm gay. Fact, you homo sapien, though you don't swing that way. Fact, the blood is red like mine and because of how you weigh. But you won't mispound a person that got age. You need to read a book with your ignorant display. You really need a hug. Don't want a hug from me? Well, good luck. I don't give a what? May try to push me down, but I get up, cause I always call you bluff. You ain't tough. The existential nature that makes you a guess what? Superior, hell nah, just a little touch. You like to live a life that's pure and plush, while criminal justice is just for us. But scientifically, you know more a human than the brother you see, and that's me. Come on. I'm no different than you. Just treated different than you as a human. You see me, but don't respect me. Why you gotta test me? I'm human. I'm no different than you. That's human. So this is called song. Go ahead. Lay down with me. Tell me what your heartbeat can see. Unafraid. Can you feel the song it plays? A song for all your days. A song when seasons fade. I am here, and there's a song for you always. Sometimes you get to doubt why my heart's rerouting. It's a hot bloody mess, I must confess. Been through a few things, not naive as it used to be. Cynical, stub in the memory. What happened? Why am I not butterflies, unicorns, and rainbows? Heaven only knows. Even Janet says that's the way love goes when it grows. So I'ma compose my own ode. No, I got bruises and scars, they beautiful tattoos to you. So this brother gonna stay true. Accept me as I am. We make our own moves and got our own plans. Help me soar above the quicksand. Catch me when I land. So take my hand. Yeah, take my hand. So glad that you're my man. Dance with me tonight. Ain't nobody here but moonlight. Let's sway to the song we know she plays. A song for all your days. A song when seasons fade. I am here, and there's a song for you always, 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 always. I got a song, you got a song, we got a song together. I got a song, you got a song, we got a song together. Thank you. Sometimes your professional life gets in the way, and you stop being as creative. So this is probably going to be in my next collection of work, and I can't see, so I got to get my glasses. but this is not published. But I wrote this. Anybody that's read my work knows it's autobiographical in that so much of it revolves around a story of forgiveness with my dad, who hasn't always been affirming and accepting. But then I have to realize who he was, how he grew up, at a different time. So seeing him recently after a stroke in Richmond, I wrote this piece called Tender. He has always been tough to touch. So rough around the edges, his hands cut when they stretch for hug. Teeth like pillars breaking for all the sweets his palate craves to balance life's sour. The blend is tangy. Though he'd never boast his affection, tears that flow easy are sissy things. He Kentucky tough, deep coal and lush mountain, black and Cherokee, a lover, a fighter. And I've been spared the burden of false choices, can show up queer and proud, having witnessed for my life long how trauma and shame can harden the heart so it no longer breaks. It's petrified of its own softness, seeking instead the designation of martyr or monument and man. He shoulder, he coach, he rev pastor bishop, made people believe both him and Jesus can miracle make, conjure cures and salves with moonshine, sweetened with strange fruit. Sweet like he prayed I wouldn't be, knowing the apple don't fall, it floats. Mirrors, echoes, and what's once made him angry now makes him proud. He Harlan and Harlem, and I am his son making sense of myself from the pieces that broke and that he couldn't bear to catch, being so heavy and rooted to toxicity that never fully bled out, though he seems to be trying. I pick up the fragments, humbled to see the strongest, meanest, sweetest man begin to crumble. And I can only hope when my days draw near, someone will see me less brave and strong for all my failure and fault, and more so my tough, just as a shell protecting a tender that don't survive easy, black boyed in America. Thank you.
Da 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 da.